Good morning, everyone. I'm Caroline Nguyen. I'm the Director of Examination for the NDEB. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Virtual OSCE Information Session. In the next 45 to 60 minutes, I will be going over important information about the examination, including how to apply and register, the protocol, and the question format. So I will now share my screen. So the exam is called the Virtual OSCE, as the exam is delivered electronically. First, I will mention the mandate of the NDEB, which is to establish a single national standard for general dentists in Canada. Our standard is the NDEB certification exam. You might have heard that in the past, there was a written and an OSCE component to the certification exam. These exams have now been replaced. Since 2023, candidates have to pass the virtual OSCE to obtain a license to practice dentistry in Canada. I will now go through the application and the registration process for the virtual OSCE. So first, let's see who is eligible to take the virtual OSCE. There are multiple groups of people who are eligible to take this exam. The first group consists of students that have graduated from an accredited dental program within the last 5 years, or students that are currently enrolled in an accredited dental program that will be within 4 months of graduation at the time of the exam. This group includes students in Canadian dental schools, but also students from internationally accredited programs, mostly in the US, Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland, as well as some other specific schools in other countries. The second group includes students that have completed or are within 4 months of completing a degree completion program in Canada or in the US. The last group of candidates is candidates who have completed the NDEB equivalency program and passed the AFK, the ACJ, and the NDEC exams. To take the examination, you will have to first apply and then register for the exam. If you have an existing NDEB account, you do not need to create a new one. But if you do not have an account, you will need to first apply. The application deadline is January 6, 2025, if you want to take the March virtual OSCE. You will be required to submit documents to the NDEB, and these documents must be received before the application deadlines, or you will not be able to register. Therefore, please do not wait until the application deadline to start this process, as documentations are mailed and need to be received by the NDEB before January 6. Your documentation needs to be received, reviewed, and approved before you can register for the exam. You will not be able to register for the virtual OSCE until your application has been fully approved by NDEB staff. So these are the steps to apply for the virtual OSCE. First, you'll need to make sure you're eligible for the virtual OSCE. Then you should review the required documents for your situation. And then you'll follow the NDEB guidelines for applications. Step 4 is to create an NDEB Connect account and submit your documents. I will detail the documents that you need to submit on the next slide. So everyone that applies to the NDEB needs to at least submit an ID and a certification process form. For the ID, you'll need a notarized copy of a government-issued photo identification in English or in French. The name must also match exactly with the name on your application. For the certification process form, It can be downloaded from the How to Apply page or from your application page in NDEB Connect. If you are currently a student in an accredited program, these two documents are likely all you'll need to submit. For the others, depending on your eligibility category, it is possible that you will need to submit additional documents. Make sure you visit the How to Apply page of our website and select your eligibility category to see the required documents. What you need to submit will depend on if you have already completed your program or if you have completed the NDEB equivalency process. Examples of other documents you might need to submit include a statement of good standing with your licensing body, evidence of continuous dental practice, or a proof of graduation from a dental program. Once you have submitted your application and documents, it will be reviewed by NDEB staff. Once your application is approved, you will receive an email confirmation. You can then log in your NDEB Connect account, and you will need to register for an exam. On your NDEB Connect account, you'll have to select Register for an exam, and the next screen will take you to registering for the Virtual OSCE and choosing a site to take your exam. For the March 2025 Virtual OSCE, the registration deadline is January 21st. So now to our main topic, the Virtual OSCE. What is the Virtual OSCE? The Virtual OSCE is a summative examination that assesses the problem-solving and critical decision-making skills required of beginning dental practitioners in Canada. The examination consists of 200 questions in a single day. There will be 50 single-answer multiple-choice questions and 150 case-based questions of various types. There is also one mandatory break in the middle. The Virtual OSCE is offered 3 times per year in March, in May, and in November. For this coming year, the March exam will take place March 16, 2025, and will be delivered in Canadian cities where there is a dental school, as well as a few US cities and in Ireland. The exam will also be administered May 26, 2025, and November 12, 2025. The May and November have relatively smaller cohorts and will use Prometric centers in Canada. We also offer the Virtual OSCE in Australia in November only. The exam is administered either on laptop or desktop computers, depending on where you take the examination. Like all NDEB written examinations, the maximum number of attempts for the Virtual OSCE is 3 times. The protocol for the Virtual OSCE contains all the information you need to know to prepare for the examination. A lot of what I am about to discuss is included in the protocol, so please consult it prior to your examination. This is the 2025 Virtual OSCE Blueprint. Please note that the 2025 protocol is not currently posted online, as we didn't want to create confusion for candidates who took the Virtual OSCE last week. The Virtual OSCE 2025 protocol will be made available online in the coming days. This blueprint shows you the approximate percentage of questions per category. Each category will contain questions pertaining to diagnosis, treatment planning and management, which includes pharmacology, therapeutics, and patients of all demographics. Similarly, radiology and dental anesthesia will also be evaluated throughout various blueprint categories. The exam can also contain questions about assessing the scientific literature, health promotion, and professionalism. If we look at the blueprint categories and compare the weight, you will see that weights differ from one category to the other. Orthodontics, for example, has 6% of questions, and operative dentistry has 16%. This means that there are a lot more questions in operative dentistry than there are in orthodontics. So how did we develop this blueprint? This blueprint is based on the knowledge, skills, and abilities for a beginning dental practitioner in Canada. They are competencies that have been identified as necessary for a dentist. From these competencies, a practice analysis survey was sent to Canadian dentists across the country, asking them how frequently they needed to perform each of these competencies and also their importance for the practice. As a general rule, we looked at which competencies were more often used by dental practitioners in their practice and assigned more weight to the corresponding blueprint category accordingly. These KSAs also align with the Association of Canadian Faculty of Dentistry competencies. It is important to note that the questions in the virtual OSCE are written by academic staff across all faculties of dentistries in Canada. Most of the academics are dental specialists and content experts in their respective fields. The final selection of the question, however, is made by general dentists because the examination is designed for general dentists, and therefore the information and content should be relevant to a general dentist. I will now go through the question formats for the exam. As mentioned before, we have standard single answer multiple choice questions, and we also have case-based questions that can be either single answer multiple choice questions, multi-answer multiple choice questions, as well as 2 short answer questions in the form of prescriptions. So starting with the most simple format, the single answer multiple choice question. This is the type of question that most people are used to in school and university. You have an example of this on the screen. Which of the following cells participate in clot formation? You should select a single correct answer here, which would be platelets. You should not leave any single answer multiple choice question without an answer on the virtual OSCE, as there is no penalty on this type of question. The minimum number of points you can get for a question is 0. The case-based questions are a little bit more complicated, so we'll spend a little longer on this morning. These questions use the NDEB release frameworks, which I am going to describe a little bit later. All the case-based questions use some sort of media, either a vignette or a case history table. They can also have one or multiple radiographs or photographs. They can also include charts, whether a periodontal chart, an endodontic chart, or an orthodontic chart. They can also include diagrams. A question can contain multiple of these medias at one time. If we use a case history table, it will be in the format that you see on the screen. Please refer to the protocol to get more information and see how we populate the various boxes of the case history tables. If you have a periodontal chart, it will look like the chart you see on your screen. It will be for a specific section of the mouth that is of interest for the questions. You can notice that there are abbreviations like CAL and BOP used here, as well as different colors and dots. For a full list of what these specific annotations mean, please refer to the protocol where everything is explained. I would also encourage you to look at the endodontic chart that can be found on the protocol that also contains a lot of different abbreviation and notations information. The NDEB frameworks are updated annually in January and reposted on the website. They are used to build the case-based questions on the Virtual OSCE. They help examiners build case-based questions in a structured way. For you as a candidate, they provide an illustration of the case-based content of the Virtual OSCE, and they can also give you an idea of the scope of the Virtual OSCE. The frameworks can be downloaded on the How to Prepare page of the NDEB website. Please do note that the number of frameworks on a particular topic that are available in the framework document does not represent the proportion of test items in this category in the Virtual OSCE. Some of the frameworks may not appear in the Virtual OSCE you will be taking, and some frameworks may appear several times. The NDEB framework take a lot of work to create. They were started in 2015, and the document is in constant evolution. It is posted currently on the NDEB website, but might also be updated prior to your examination. So please make sure you look for the most up-to-date version. The frameworks are available for everyone to download, but they are copyright material. So please be aware that reproducing these frameworks is permitted only on the specific terms set by the NDEB. So how do the frameworks work? Here is an example of a framework you can find in our document. I am starting with a single correct answer example. The question here is, what is the most likely radiographic diagnosis for the entity indicated by the arrow? So this tells you that this framework would be used with a radiograph. And you can see a very long list of answers. There is 26 answers currently associated with this framework in the document. So what the examiners do is provide a radiograph that they want to use with this framework. They then eliminate answers that they don't like and decrease the number of available answers to 15 or less. So on the exam, your questions will look more like this. You will have the radiograph and the question, what is the most likely radiographic diagnosis for the entity indicated by the arrow? And you'll see a shorter list of possible answers. If you answered maxillary sinus for these questions, you would get a full 1 mark. Now let's go to a more complex type of question. It's still a case-based multiple choice questions, but you have one or more correct answers. So you have one radiograph here, and the question is, what observations can be made when evaluating tooth 4-4? We have 6 answer choice. So when looking at tooth 4-4, you have to determine what could be the correct answers. There could be only one, or there could be multiple. In this case, the examiners have assessed that tooth 4-4 show an inadequate length of obturation, an inadequate density of obturation, and a missed canal. So there are 3 answers, and each answer gives you a third of the mark. If you answer all these 3 answers without selecting any of the wrong answers, you will get full mark. If you answer only some of the correct answers without selecting any wrong answers, you will get partial mark. However, if you select any of the incorrect answers, you will lose all your mark for the question. As you can see on the screen, the incorrect answers are -1 point. But note that the minimum score you can get for each question is 0. So you should definitely select at least one answer for all the questions on our exam. But if you are unsure of additional answer, know that you might lose all the points for a given question if you select a single wrong answer. Another example of a select one or more correct answers is something like this question. There is radiographic evidence of caries on ... and you'll have to select the teeth surfaces where you see caries. And you can see from the answer choice that you should focus your attention to quadrant 2 in this particular question. So look at every surface in quadrant 2, one by one. Is there caries on the distal of 2-3? Yes. On the medial of 2-4? No. On the distal of 2-4? Yes. On the mesial of 2-5? Yes. On the distal of 2-5? Yes. On the mesial of 2-6? No. On the distal of 2-6? Maybe. There's a bit of overlap there. And on the mesial of 2-7, there's also the same overlap. So again, maybe. So let's see what the examiners have decided for the scoring in this situation. You can see that the very clear caries are what we said on the distal of 2-3, the distal of 2-4, the mesial of 2-5, and the distal of 2-5. So if you selected these 4 answers and then select any answers that is clearly without caries, you would get your full 1 mark. If you selected any of the surface where there was an overlap, like the distal of 2-6 and the mesial of 2-7, you can see you will not get any point, but you also won't be penalized for selecting them, as the given marks for those 2 answers is 0. So this is a recap on how the scoring goes for a multi-answer, multiple-choice question. This is an example of scoring for 3 different candidates. You can see the clearly wrong answers have a -1 point. There are 3 correct answers, and if you select all 3 of them without a wrong answer, like candidate number 1, you will get your full mark. If you select only 2 of the correct answers and 1 of the 0 value answers and none of the wrong answers, you will get a partial mark of 0.66, like candidate number 2. If you select 1 wrong answer, despite having all the correct answers as well, you will get 0 for the question, like candidate number 3. You will notice that the frameworks posted on the website may include more than 1 question. These are examples of questions that may be used with that particular frameworks in the examination. It can be something like, what is the initial management, or what is the most appropriate management? And I strongly encourage you to review the protocol, as it includes a definition of certain terms used in our questions, such as what does initial management mean? The final type of questions we have under Virtual OSCE is the prescription. We have 2 types of prescriptions. The first type is 2 boxes. A big box where you should type your prescription, and a smaller box for the repeats. If you think the prescription should not be repeated or renewed, you need to enter a 0 in that small box. The second type of prescription contains 5 boxes. A box for the drug, another for the strength, then the dispensing quantity, then signature, and the number of repeats. All boxes will expand to accommodate text. There will be a prescription in each part of the exam, So one in part 1 before the break and one in part 2 after the break. For the grading, each multiple choice question is worth 1 mark, and they're all the same weight. Each prescription is worth 4 marks. After we run an exam, we release results. We perform a complete, detailed statistical analysis for all the questions before we release the results. We look at many things, but in particular, the difficulty of the question, which is the percentage of candidates that will get the question correct. For each question, we also assess if the candidates that perform well answered it correctly, or if it was difficult for the candidates that perform well on the overall exam. The NDEB might remove questions that were too difficult on the exam. The passing score of the examination is established based on the content of the examination. We gather a group of dentists that will take the examination and independently rate the level of difficulty of each question. They will base their rating on the performance of a minimally competent graduating dentist. So the evaluators assess that the weakest candidate that is expected to safely practice dentistry should be able to pass the examination. So the passing score is based on the average of all these ratings, and this will make the raw passing score for the exam. This raw passing score is then rescaled to a passing score of 75. This rescaling does not change the raw score or the number of correct answers you need to pass the examination. So what might you do to prepare for the exam? A lot of documents are available to prepare you for the virtual OSCE. They can be found on the How to Prepare page of the website. The virtual OSCE protocol is definitely very important and is available on our website. The NDEB virtual OSCE frameworks are also available on the website and should be read. The KSAs and also some grading examples are also available for you. There is also a virtual OSCE orientation video available on the How to Prepare page. This video explains features and functionality of the software that is used for the examination, including when questions are saved, how to submit your exam, and how to get help during your exam. So please do take a few minutes to watch it before taking your exam. To recap, at this stage, please remember to apply and submit your documents so that the NDEB can receive them prior to the application deadline of January 6th if you are wanting to register for the March virtual OSCE. And when you receive the confirmation that your application was approved, please remember to register for the virtual OSCE, select a location to take the exam, and pay your registration fee. So thank you for joining us today. I trust that I gave you a lot of information, and I hope that you found it helpful. If you need more information, you can look at the NDEB website. Thank you very much, and good luck with the exam.